You have to go first. You've got to treat him like a king, and then he will naturally treat you like a queen.
We've got Noona Nafousi with us, the brain trainer. I think that's the only introduction you need. Welcome to the show. Let's talk brains.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show.
What is a brain trainer?
I don't think we get taught how to use our brain at all. The annoyance isn't about the dishes. It's never about the dishes. It was something so much deeper.
Ultimately, it's because there's all this pent-upness.
The woman said to me, so you want your husband to treat you like a queen? And I said, well, yeah, I do. She said, okay, you're treating him like a king then?
What did you discover about yourself during this process?
It was really confronting to me. It's basically like having a manual for your brain. It is about taking like real radical responsibility for your own happiness and your own emotions. That is tough. Anything that feels painful or hard is because it's trying to crack open something that I actually really want.
Guys, Matt Haycox here, and welcome to another croaky episode of the Matt Haycox Show. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks I won't have to introduce myself like that, but I'm still suffering a bunged up nose and a dodgy throat. But today I'm very excited because I've got Noona Nafousi with us, and she is the brain trainer. And I think that's the only introduction you need, the brain trainer. When you said that to me, I thought I'm very, very excited to hear what that means. Maybe you can train my brain. I'd love to know how everybody else's brain needs training. But Noona, welcome to the show, and let's talk brains.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on this show.
What is a brain trainer?
Brain trainer. So essentially, I don't think we get taught how to use our brain at all. And I decided at 26 that I really wanted to learn how to use my brain because I was extremely angry and didn't understand why I was getting triggered all the time. And I did my NLP master NLP practitioner. And then I've studied neuroscience, I did psychology also at university, and I've just tapped into, and I can give people bite-sized explanations of why they're getting the results they're getting and how they can change it by changing the way that they use their brain.
But 26, most 26-year-olds are probably out there drinking and partying, certainly not thinking that they haven't learned how to use their brains properly. I mean, what was kind of going on in your personal life or your brain or your corporate life that made you think that your brain doesn't work? Why did you think you weren't using enough of it?
Yeah, so it was my first marriage actually. I got married at 22, which is way too young. And we were having loads of rows, and that could be because we weren't right for each other. But I really wanted to understand, why am I getting so triggered? And I was getting I'm Iraqi. We're very hot-headed. Very fiery and very hot-headed. And I didn't really want to grow up like that. I grew up in the UK and consider myself
was your
British.
Husband English?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was English as well. And he was very kind of quiet and would, we were complete opposites when it came to arguing. He wouldn't speak for weeks on end, and that would drive me insane. And so I just decided, I saw this thing being advertised online, and there wasn't really much online then. And it was about trigger. And I went to do this course. It was in Bournemouth with an amazing guy called Reg Connolly. And I went to do this course on triggers, and it just blew my mind.
What does a trigger mean?
So trigger is something, say, for example, someone says something and you react to it in a way that is so much you have a whole visceral body reaction where it's not really equal to what's being said. So the way you're reacting is like an absolute nutter. But what was said really was so small. And so it's triggering something inside you.
And is that not a pent-upness? I'm trying to relate this to me and my missus. I mean, she gets triggered very easily, but I would say that that's because we hate each other. We've had 3 years of probably doing things that each of us don't like, and therefore, settings, like if I said something, and I'll always say to her, with you the punishment never fits the crime. I'll do something, and which will either be nothing or it might be a little something, but just like a little something, whatever. You left the dishes out, for example, and because you've left the dishes out, she'll go absolutely berserk. But ultimately it's because there's all this pent-upness. But are you saying it's more complicated than that?
Yeah, then? It is, and the annoyance isn't about the dishes. It's never about the dishes. And it's the same with us when I, in my previous marriage, it was never about the dishes. It was something so much deeper. And what I have learned throughout my years of doing this is that normally these triggers come out because our body remembers something that happened to us. It's normally up until the age of 7. And there is a moment in time where we have a fear or something, and our body remembers, and it's the same body reaction. And that's why I learned from one of my mentors is they say, like, if it's hysterical, it's historical. It's never ever about what's in front of us. It's the fact that it's reminded us of something that happened. That's why, it's not the dishes. It's probably not even you. It's just a memory. And this is something that, has really helped me because it means that I take complete responsibility when I get angry with someone or annoyed, which is really annoying because it means I can't blame anyone. So as freeing as it is, it's also, there's a lot of responsibility on me to say, like, okay, well, if I'm annoyed, that's on me. And
when you started to learn this stuff, did your husband go to learn it with you as
well?
No.
So my ex-husband, no, he didn't. And actually, I became stronger and stronger because I realized that it wasn't him that was making me upset. It was me. But on the other side, I'm not really the person who can make him upset either. He needed to take responsibility for his own. And in the end, the way that marriage ended is he just got up and walked out one day and never came back. Never saw him.
And what did you discover about yourself during this process? I mean, did you find childhood trauma or stuff that you did or maybe didn't know about?
Yeah, the trauma is like, when we say trauma, we think of something amazing, like major happening. Trauma is something so small, like writing on a board and the whole class laughing. And when you're a child, that feels like the end of the world for you. So I just want to kind of clarify when I'm talking about trauma, it's something really small, but it's our body felt so much fear that in that moment when you're writing on the board and everyone's laughing, you feel like being visible is not safe. And that's a decision that you make. And then
why do some people, because you can go two ways with that, can't you? It can be you write on the board, all the kids laugh at you and you're mortified and you curl into a ball for the rest of your life, or you write on the board, all the kids laugh at you and you say, I'm going to be so fucking great that no kid will ever laugh at me again. Why do people take, or how do people take that different path?
It comes down to personality, number one. But say, for example, I had a CEO who came to me because he felt he could not speak in conferences. Now, this is a really successful guy. He's managing a millions, business. He's got a team of like over 500 people in the company and it's global. But every time he got asked to speak in front of people, his whole body would crumble and he had imposter syndrome. He thought, I cannot get up and speak in front of everyone. Maybe I'm not right in the job. And he's the one who had this writing on the board and everyone started laughing. It's only when we did some work and realized that at that moment he decided that it wasn't safe to be visible. And you can go either way. You can either lean into it like, yes, or you can do what he did was like, no, this isn't my truth. I'm going to become a CEO. But the thought of him speaking still, he was still fighting against it. And so his body still had this whole visceral reaction and didn't want to do it. And it's only when we did the work together, we understood why. It was a blind spot, essentially. And once you see a blind spot, you take the power away from it. Sorry.
No. Well, I was going to say, let's use him as an example.
Yeah.
Now. And you talk about when you do the work together. So, I mean, what do you do? How does the coaching process work? And how long does it take? And what kind of results would he expect at the end of it?
Yeah, I love that question. So basically, the way that it happens is we go through an example. So we go through his trigger there and then. So we sit him down and say, right, they've asked you to go on this, speak at this global conference. And he's like, yeah, I'm just like so nervous. So then I will work with him and be like, okay, where in your body do you feel it? He'll say, I feel it in my throat. I feel it in my chest. So we go through it. We kind of, it's not so much hypnosis, but we'll do some kind of regression work. So we'll have a look and see like, okay, so feel into that. And then we go back and say, when's the first time you ever felt that? And the memory just came to him. And he said, I was standing in front of the class and everyone was laughing at me. And then we talk about like, okay, in that moment, what decision did you make about yourself? It's not safe to be visible. Right. Now we know where this has come from. So that information within itself is so powerful. Like imagine he's in this role thinking, I think I'm going to resign because I'm not right for this position, rather than, oh, it's got nothing to do with me. It's just my body is remembering something, is a mini trauma. That's why I can't stand in front of a group of people. And then we start working through it. And just 3 months ago, he did a global conference in front of thousands of people.
But he was still nervous, presumably?
So what we did is we started doing small things, like do it in front of 20 people. You can talk for 20 minutes. Can you do it for half an hour? Can you do it for an hour? So it's really managing his nervous system slowly and slowly.
Would he not even do a presentation before that?
He could do a presentation, but he would like to do it over Zoom. So he didn't want to stand up. Board meetings were a big one for him, where he was being a bit too agreeable. Even though he wanted to stand up and do the presentation, he would get the MD to do it and would do it under the demise of like, I think this will be really good training for you, whatever he could. But then he felt like a fraud. So yeah, it's just completely given him his confidence back in his role.
But would you expect that cause I'm trying to think of this in my own context. Like I told you the other day, I did a talk on Saturday, and I taught before, don't do loads and loads, but even though it's something I've done before, I would still feel, let's say, nerves or apprehension. It's an audience who doesn't know me. It's a type of talk I've not done before, and I feel like I wake up and I can sit there before I go on, think, oh, I'm nervous. On the one hand, it would be very easy to find an excuse to cancel. In the same token, I think, well, it's more important to me not to let other people down who I've told that I'm going to do this. And, right up until that minute of walking on stage, you're still always thinking, what's my excuse to get out of this? Then you start talking for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and look around the room and see that people are, oh my God, these people are listening to me. These people are taking notes about what I'm saying. Therefore, call it an ego play, whatever you want to say at that point. Then all of a sudden, it's shifting. I'm thinking, I don't want to stop after an hour. I want to keep talking for 5 hours, because now I've gone from nervous to having my ego fueled. Yeah.
The difference is you didn't feel like you were about to die going on there. So he had that mini trauma that for him, it was life or death. It was like, I cannot go up and speak because I feel like I'm going to die. So he just would not do it. So, for you, it's like the fear and excitement are the same in our body and emotion. So fear and excitement can really, it's like, oh my God, I'm so excited, but I'm excited, but I'm fearful. And yes, your brain will tell you don't do that and all of that. So that I don't think for you was like a, you've got a trauma about it or something like that, because he had a full body fear, life or death. Something's going to happen to me if I get up and speak.
So what's NLP, and where does that fit in with what we've been talking about? I mean, is it part of it? Is it something different? Or?
Yeah, so NLP is Neuro-linguistic Programming. It's basically, the way I love to describe it, it's basically like having a manual for your brain. So when I learned about it when I was 26 and I did my master's, it was really about how you can understand people by modeling them, by understanding what their thoughts are, by understanding people's eyes movements, like were they getting a memory, were they making one up? So all of these things, and in terms of the language you use, how to use language in sales.
Because I was going to say, I don't know anything about NLP other than I hear about it a lot in the kind of personal development space, and it's normally talked about as a sales technique or a let's say a manipulation technique, maybe in the nicest sense of the word, that, you know, how to make somebody else do what you want them to do, whether that's, you know, a customer buy from you, or, you know, your missus be happy with you, or whatever it may be. I mean, is that...
It is. So say, for example, you're buying a car for someone and someone said to you, before you decide to buy this car, let me show you this. They've already planted the fact that you were going to buy exactly. And very good salespeople already do this without even thinking about it. So it's a great drive, isn't it? So if I'm saying isn't it, you have to agree. Yeah. There's also cues that you can do. So it's like, if you're anything like me, and it goes, well, I've just emphasis like me. So your brain all can hear is like me. Yeah. So it's things like that that you can, and the way that it got developed is they looked at really good salespeople and looked at what they were doing already naturally, and then created it. So you can use it in persuasion, but I think, I think it's really powerful. But for me, there was still something that I wanted to go deeper in when it comes, because it wasn't really teaching me about the subconscious and the conscious mind, and in terms of what I just talked to you about, in terms of these little traumas that happen to us when we're younger, and how to change how we feel about ourselves.
And where does confidence come in? I mean, is that like, because again, to me, I probably look at confidence like a muscle that, you know, that if there's something you don't like doing, well, you've got to find a way to do it. And, you know, the more times you do it, the, you know, not necessarily the happier you'll be, but just the, let's say, subconsciously trained to accept it, you'll be. And, you know, your confidence is like a muscle that will grow if you keep using it. But do these techniques like the NLP, like, you know, whatever you do at Neo Noor, do they build confidence as well?
Absolutely. And I think the way I learnt about confidence is when I was a recruiter, and, you know, you'd interview 10 people a day, and someone would walk in and you just knew they were going to get the job, not because they had the exact qualifications, but because of their confidence. So I started studying all these people, like, what is it? And I must have done like 12,000 hours of one-to-one. I was going to say, I've got a stat on here that says, let me find this. It says you've conducted over 14,000 hours of one-to-one interviews. Yeah.
Oh, wild.
Well, because I started interviewing when I was 20 and I'm now 45. So it's been, you know, my whole career is just interviewing people back to back. And sometimes I'd do 15 interviews a day. You'd do telephone interviews, face to face. So yeah, you get to learn very quickly who's walked in confidently and who hasn't. And the thing that I realized is the people who are confident are the ones who trust themselves, who know that even if I don't get this job, I'm going to be okay. And that is really attractive. You know, when somebody's sitting there saying like, they're not desperate for the job, and putting someone like that in front of a client, and there's a very big difference between confidence and arrogance. Arrogance, you're covering up an insecurity. Confidence is, they're nice and humble, but they know that if not this job, something better. And so how do I teach people that? How can I then get a really good client who on paper should be really confident but isn't? And the thing that I teach my clients is, if you want to be confident, you've got to learn to trust yourself. And that, the way you do that is by honoring your word to yourself. And what happens is, say, for example, if I asked you to lend me some money and I never paid you back, I said I'd pay back in a month and I don't. And then I came back to you in 6 months' time and said, could I lend some money? You wouldn't trust me because I didn't keep my promise to you. And you probably wouldn't like me either. And I'd probably take me to court. Now, we become the worst lenders to ourselves because we say that we're going to do something and then we don't.
I'm going to diet. I'm going to do 50 press-ups a day. I'm not going to eat that chocolate donut.
Yeah. And so we're constantly breaking our promise to ourselves, and then we wonder why we don't trust ourselves. And then we don't trust ourselves, we don't like ourselves, we don't have any confidence in ourselves. So it's like saying like, oh, I'm going to do that. And in your brain, you're already like, no, you're not. You've already said it. And I think one of the most powerful person in the room is the person who honors their word to themselves, whose word is worth more than like $1 million in the bank. It's that. And then the reason why I love teaching this to leaders is because so many people in leadership positions are saying, well, my team don't trust me. I'm like, okay, do you trust yourself? Like, no, but, you know, I'm like, well, how do you expect someone else to trust you? So if you want to be a really good leader or someone who runs a business, you've got to have your own back, and then other people will trust you, will follow you, will be happily led by you.
Let's just veer off at a slight angle for a minute, because I'm quite interested to talk to you about your time headhunting and interviewing all these people, because recruitment is the bane of my life as a business owner. And I know from, the many people I talk to or my peers that, we always struggle to recruit and retain good staff. If you talk to some of my team who've been with me for many years, they'll always laugh at me as a kind of a reckless, terrible recruiter who's hired, many morons over the years. And I say this and I believe it. I don't say it, to try and justify my crap recruiting. I always say to people that I think it's not that I'm, so bad and only recruit idiots. It's that I recruit so many more people than most. And I think that 98% of people are idiots. And I think, if you run a small business and you've only got 2 or 3 people that work there, probably people most small businesses, you've hired your sister, your missus, your best friend's cousin, where you almost know the characteristics anyway, so you're not taking that much of a chance on them. You may be taking a chance on their technical ability, but in terms of their kind of personality and their fit, you probably know them very well. Whereas, I've recruited hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years. It's impossible to know them well. And I kind of take the view that, well, you can never really know what someone's like until they've started. So if I feel like they could be all right, hire them, and then probably have to get rid of them pretty quick if it doesn't work out. Now, some would say that's just my way of justifying to myself that I'm not following a decent recruitment process. But how do you go about interviewing these people? How are you making decisions? I mean, I guess if you're headhunting, you're only interviewing to a point, aren't you? And then you're passing them onto the business for them to kind of recruit and make decisions. But if you were advising an employer on how to be a better interviewer, a better recruiter, what would you be saying?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you've got to trust your gut. And I think I've done recruitment on the agency side and the in-house side. It's really understanding the role and the culture of the company. You've got to hire people who are going to get on with the people you already have in your team, number one. And number two, you can really suss out what someone's like through different types of questioning. Like for me, I wouldn't just ask them like, oh, where are you going to be in 5 years' time of that? I'm just not interested in that. For me, it's kind of catching them off guard and knowing, and this is where a lot of NLP comes in. I can tell if someone's lying to me in an interview very quickly from the way that they're moving their eyes or the way that they're talking. So it's really getting somebody in who's actually going to be in the role by knowing, like, what do they do on the weekends? Are they going to want to hang out with your staff? Are they not? Are they going to go completely against it? I think questioning is a big one in learning the right questions to ask people. And that is a skill. It does take a lot of time.
And do you have a bank of 10 perfect questions, or do you think they need to be flexed according to the kind of person?
They have to be completely flexed, not just to the person, but for if you gave me 3 roles to fill in your company, each of those roles will require a different set of questions and a different set of assessments as well. Like, am I just assessing the skill, or is it purely on personality, or am I assessing motivation, or am I assessing, the ability to think on their feet? Is it like, what is it that and if you tell me the role, I will be able to tell you exactly what type of questions to look at.
Tell me, I mean, give me a couple of questions or a couple of, let's say, different examples between, say, a lower level, maybe a more administrative type role, and then someone from, let's say, a director, a C-suite type thing. Because I guess whilst on the one hand they're completely different positions, somebody who's at a lower level, if you get the right people, you would want them to work through the ranks and become that C-suite person at some point in time. So, I mean, are you looking for some of those characteristics in them at that point, or is that too early to know?
No, I think you can train skill and you can train strategy. One of the things that I think is very difficult to instill in people is attitude and motivation.
Impossible.
It's just not going to happen. So for a low level sales role, or an entry level, you're looking for someone who's quite motivated. They can learn everything else. When it comes to someone more senior, you're looking for someone, yes, who's got the right attitude, but they've got to have the strategic knowledge as well. And they've got to have the people knowledge as well. And they've got to have the leadership knowledge. So all of that will have to come into it. And you've got to know where they're going. So if I was to hire a CEO, I need to know that they're happy to be a CEO for the next 7 to 8 years, not that I then want to go onto the board, or I'm looking to retire in the next 2 years. So you need to get a whole picture. And I think a lot of recruiters just want to put the person in front of the client without really doing their due diligence and getting to. I mean, I love recruitment. I'm so nosy as well. I love asking people questions. And there is an art to understanding somebody that isn't just in, you ask everything, like, what is your family life? What do you do to relax? Where do you like to go on holiday? All of those things are going to give me information, as well as, okay, so it's the end of the month and your team haven't hit your targets. What do you do? And then you can say, are they stuttering? Do they give me an answer straight away? Have they been in this position before? The thing about recruitment, you're looking for the unspoken answer.
How do you know if they're answering it just for the sake of the interview? That's not what they really do in real life.
You can tell straight away.
Yeah.
You can tell straight away. So say, for example, someone doesn't think real life. They'll be like, well, that split second is made up. It's a split moment.
And when you're interviewing, or when you're in the interviewing process, how many times do you think it's appropriate, to get somebody back? I mean, second interviews, third interviews, doing test examples or, mini projects. I mean, I guess obviously it's going to differ between different job roles, but again, I sit down and I think, well, okay, I've had a chat with you, I've had a second chat with you, but I can have 25 chats with you and I don't really think anything's going to change between today and last time. And I just kind of, so I'm going to pick up my balls and get on with it. But I'm sure I am probably far too gung-ho with that. I mean, how many times, do you think it's appropriate and how long would that interview process last for?
It does depend on the role, and it does depend on the business as well. Like, do your board need to interview them? Are you the last decision maker? Do you want your team members to interview them? Which I think actually people overlook a lot, where they're like, but what do you mean? They're going to be reporting to them. I think, it depends on the position. I don't think you want to make the interview process too long either, because it shows that you're a business who, can't really make much of a decision. I think it depends. I think by 3 interviews, you've pretty much got to know the person, and a couple of tests as well. I love role plays as well for interviews.
Let's go back to brain training and NLP. So obviously you were saying that I guess you got interested in this because you were having issues with your ex-husband at the time. Just before we started recording, you were telling me that you're remarried now with a couple of kids. When you met this guy and you started to go into that relationship, how did things look different for you, or rather, how did you look at things differently based on what you'd now learned about brain training, NLP, etc. And you had a blank canvas with a new guy, as opposed to to problems that had been set in before? Yeah,
I love that question. So I met my ex-husband when I was 22, and I met my husband my current husband when I was 33. So complete, I was a lot older, a lot wiser, hopefully. But the thing is with relationships is that your partner is a mirror to you. And it took me a really long time to figure that the person who's standing in front of me, who's like, I've decided to share my life with, is the person who's reflecting where my gaps are. And if I didn't know that coming into this marriage, I also probably would have blamed him for getting annoyed, for my anger, for the arguments, like, how dare you say that to me? And obviously, you know, after, I don't know, 2 years or something, suddenly the glasses come off, and everyone is going to argue in a relationship. I think the difference now is that when we have had rows, I know it's me. I know I'm getting triggered. I know that I need to do some work. And, you know, sometimes it is really exhausting. And sometimes it's like, oh God, why can't I just blame? But I know now. And I actually went for some coaching myself about 6 months ago. And the woman said to me, you know, so you want your husband to treat you like a queen? And I said, well, yeah, I do. She said, okay, you treating him like a king then? I just thought, oh, God, why am I here again? You know, and it was really confronting to me because she said to me, you know, which I obviously know, that I'm not coaching your husband, I'm coaching you. So if you want him to be a certain way, you have to go first. You've got to treat him like a king. And then he will naturally treat you like a queen. And that was, you know, sometimes you don't want to go first. Your stubbornness gets in the way. But that was me having to learn. And obviously, you know, I don't think there's any shame of asking for help.
But that's, I mean, like, to me, that sounds, let's say, a lot more simple than NLP or brain training. You know, I mean, I've been seeing a couple therapists actually myself over the last couple of weeks with my other half. Hope she doesn't listen to these podcasts. You know, it's interesting because, like, you know, I've said to my girlfriend, look, we'll go to the couples therapy, and I'm happy to go to it as many times as you want, but I don't see it doing me any benefit because I know the answer. You know, like, at the end of the day, I need to do X, Y, Z or behave like in a certain way to be a great boyfriend. But it's a two-way street. And, you know, we can sit there, we can take it in turns to hold the talking stick and all that bollocks. But the reality is, you know, you need to behave in a certain way, i.e. you need to be a great girlfriend. And if you're a great girlfriend, I'll be a great boyfriend. And, you know, I mean, I think for me, the benefit of being in the room with the therapist is just that it's almost like a calm, safe environment, if you like, where we can talk about some of the things that it's not that we wouldn't talk about it at home, but you certainly wouldn't be able to talk about it without getting irate. Because, you know, when you're in that privacy, you just want to shout and scream and then you both go off in your separate directions. So, you know, I've said, listen, I'll go as many times as you want and just have a calm conversation. But I don't know, maybe I'm just I sound probably oversimplistic, you know, to too many things, you know, like the therapist says, right, well, let's write this piece of paper and we're going to write all the bullet points of everything that you that Matt wants out of a girlfriend and that, you know, Elena wants out of a boyfriend. I'm saying my list's going to be very short. You know, don't be an alcoholic, and don't disrespect me. Tick those 2 boxes, and pretty much anything else flies. You know, and if you can do that, then I will be the best boyfriend in the world. But then I feel we've got on a wild tangent here. But because I think we started obviously talking in the context of the NLP and what did you know or see differently with your new husband. But I mean, does anything I've been talking about fit into
it? Does. And I know you were saying like, oh, that seems a bit easier, but actually, you know, what I was getting coached on in that moment was that I needed to show up as the version of him that I wanted, regardless of how he shows up. So, you know, you're saying, well, if I do this, you do this. What I was working on is to have zero expectation and to be, because if you're married to, you know, a decent human being, which I am, and somebody who you trust, which I do, I knew, you know, so much of it can very much get like tit for tat, like, well, I'll do this and I'm going to keep counting. And then when I've done this, then you know, you're not allowed to do that because if you do, my resentment's going to be so much higher because I have been working for so hard. And so what I was getting coaching on was that regardless, you show up as, and you be the version that you want him to be in the relationship, regardless. Because then, you know, if I came in here with like a face like thunder and wasn't really asking your questions, this interview would have been completely different. the fact that, you're chatty, easy to talk to, I'm like coming in with like a really positive attitude. The energy that I bring in is going to affect the way this interview goes with how the energy that you bring in. And the thing is, it only takes one person to change the energy in a relationship for it to change. And I was willing to be that person. So it's by no means easy. And that's one thing I did learn. The difference is that I go first.
Can anyone benefit from NLP and from the brain training, or is it a particular personality type or personality characteristics, or can literally anybody of any age, any demographic benefit from this?
Yeah, I think anybody can, but not everyone will, because I have to say, as somebody who used to really like to play the victim. And I can say that because I know that I don't anymore. It was really important for me to say like, yeah, but they did this, they did that. And, that is quite nice to be able to blame someone else. When you get into this work, it is about taking like real radical responsibility for your own happiness and your own emotions. And that is tough. It's really tough.
I think if you blame, this is for me nothing to do with, let's say, NLP, just my logic in general, that if you get used to blaming other people, then you get into a position where you can never fix anything.
Yeah.
If everything's your fault, then I'm completely reliant on you to make it right again. I have to find a way for it to be my fault, to be my responsibility, and only then can I change it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big responsibility on yourself, isn't it?
And I always try and take it to the extreme really and say that absolutely everything that happens is my fault. When I don't know, if I lend to a borrower who doesn't pay me back, well, I can sit there and go, well, this guy's a bastard, he didn't pay me back. I can say, well, he never held a gun to my head. He didn't force me to lend the money to him. I made the underwriting decisions, which have been clearly not good enough because I've allowed myself to give him money that I now can't recover.
Yeah.
Or, I can go, that member of staff, God, they've cost me 100 grand in wages and heartache and failed everything. But again, they didn't hold a gun to my head and tell me to hire them. I made a shit hiring decision. How do I fix it again for the future?
And then I do believe as well, like there's a sense of duality in life as well, that, to get great power, sometimes you do need to go through great pain. And that all of those lessons that you learned got you to where, taught you something. And I think that's one thing as well where I learned, like anything that feels painful or hard is because it's trying to crack open something that I actually really want. But there's a couple of lessons that I need to know to toughen up, because, and this is what I say about some of these leaders or CEOs, directors who come to see me. I'm like, who you are in essence is who you are in your tough times. And the best way I can describe it is as a leader. So like, when your team are delivering and they're hitting targets and you've done the right hiring and everything, like honestly, a monkey could manage that team because everything is going perfectly. So that's not essentially who you are as a leader. It's when targets are not being hit, you've made the wrong hire, it's the end of the month, everything's fallen through. That is who you are truly as a leader. But people think like, but who I am is when things are really good. But I mean, everyone can be, I'm great to be around when everything's good. But you come and see me when I've had a row with my partner, with my husband, and the kids are fighting and I haven't eaten and I'm hangry, and all of those things. Who am I then? That's really in essence who I am. And I think if you can remember that and know that it's these tough moments that shape you and make you, then we can all kind of like ease our way through it instead of, fighting these situations.
Let's talk specifically about Neo Noor.
Yep.
How long has that business been set up now?
So it's been going, it's just about a year and a half now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you started that, had you just moved out of recruitment?
No, I got made redundant during COVID. And
as a headhunter?
As a headhunter, yep. And then I set up my coaching business. I really wanted nothing to do with the corporate world after that. The way I got let go was not very nice. My boss had essentially stolen some money from me. They're like, that's it, I'm done with the corporate world. So I was really coaching corporate mums on how to deal with being in the corporate world. But then loads of people were coming to me who were not mums, who wanted help on how to become, better leaders. And so I was kind of doing that on the side. And then a couple of people were approaching me to do corporate workshops. I thought, okay, the universe is trying to tell me something here. And then I set up Neo Noor, and I thought, okay, let's officially make it that I'm back into the corporate world.
And you've got 3 offerings, haven't you? I think you do one-to-one.
Do one-to-one.
Group and corporate.
And actually, again, how the universe works in funny ways. I've been approached a lot to do headhunting. And now we are officially adding headhunting back onto Neo Noor.
Coaching headhunters.
No,
I will
start. I would add recruitment to
back into the
recruitment game. Yeah, it's been calling me. So,
will you have a team to do that with you then?
I will. Yeah.
Okay. Any particular sectors, roles?
I was thinking of doing events because that's what I know. But then, all of these things happen because people keep approaching me. But then I've got so many people in so many different industries kind of coming to me and asking me to do recruitment for them. So I guess I'm just gonna see what happens.
How does it differ when you're coaching on a group basis to on a one-to-one basis? Because I mean, just from some of the things we've talked about, I would imagine that when you're doing one-to-one, there might be some more private stuff discussed, or some, what people would not want to be discussing in an open forum.
Yeah.
Especially if we're talking traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
How does a coaching experience differ when you're doing it group and doing it one-to-one?
Yeah. Really good question. So when you're doing it one-to-one, yes, you are doing it on a much deeper level, and you're tapping into a lot of changes that you can see, and you're able to be a lot more vulnerable. So, you're opening up more. The change is a lot deeper, but it's probably, not the most like happy. My sessions aren't like you're not walking out skipping. You're also not walking out crying. So, you are really cracking yourself open, and then we're like healing and putting ourselves back together again. The thing with the group, and that I really love about the group training, is that it's very much revolved around mindset and adding engagement to your team. And for example, I went and did some coaching in a recruitment business the other day, and they said 2 days later, the person got 2 offers out of 1 position, and they got a retainer. And it's just from having that mindset and that like going out, making more calls. So it's great, but
is that a group coaching you do?
Group coaching, one-on-one? Yeah. So it does.
But one person particularly benefited from it more than
2 people did. So they got retainers into the business, and somebody else, instead of getting 1 deal, got 2 deals from 1 client. So I think it benefits both. It depends what you're looking for. But if you really you feel something is holding you back, one-to-one. If you want your team to perform better, group.
How would you, say, convince or educate someone who was not interested to kind of take part in the training in the first place? It's a corporate environment. It's going to be group training, and you know what it's like in so many corporates, where it's like when we were at school. The guest speakers coming in, and all we really hope is great. That means we can toss it off for now. We don't have to do maths class anymore. But most people go in with a closed-minded attitude. They don't want to listen. They certainly don't want to learn, and that's always one of my biggest criticisms of corporate life in the UK. Anyway, that as soon as anybody's finished school, they've completely switched off to development, to growth, to learning. You've got a group class. There's a couple of people sat at the front paying great attention, and everyone else is playing on the phone with their arms crossed at the back of the room. How do you educate those people on what they're missing out on? Yeah.
Look, I come from the corporate world, and I recruited salespeople, and I know what guys in sales are like. And so, honestly, that's down to me to make to make my workshops fun, because what I'm talking about are some like a mindset. It's having the right mindset. It's changing the way you speak to yourself. But it's my responsibility to make that coaching really enjoyable. And you do get in the beginning people, but when it hits, and when you can see people suddenly like, I deliver the training, yes, in a fun way, but I'm speaking to their souls. They know that they've had these thoughts before, that they're struggling with X, Y, and Z, and they want the results, and they want to make more, perform better in their roles. So that's my role. which I remember when, before we started, you saying, could you train someone up? I'm so passionate about it. And I think you've got to know the audience that you're speaking to. If I'm going to be speaking to a bunch of young guys who are in sales, it's a completely different conversation and delivery that I'm going to do if I'm going to be talking to CEOs, or if I'm talking to, I don't know, directors or women or men. You've got to speak to them like in their hearts. And for me, my aim is to shift something internally, and I can't do that unless I kind of speak their language.
Have you ever done this for kids?
No, I haven't done it with kids. I do it with my own.
I was going to say, do you do it for your own?
I do, absolutely.
Does it work?
It does work.
Tidy
They hate
your rooms.
it. They hate it. So I think one of the worst things that we can do as parents is not want our kids to be disappointed, because I see so many adults that are so scared of disappointment. So say, for example, we do a movie night, and one Friday it's my daughter picks, one Friday my son picks. And when it was my son's turn, he was 6, and he just burst into tears. And I just said to him, like, empathize. Yep, I know you're really disappointed, but I'm okay with you being disappointed.
Why is he disappointed, sorry?
Because he couldn't pick the movie.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying it was his night to
so
pick
he was
them.
like really disappointed, like, oh, it's my fault. And I'm like, you're allowed to be disappointed. But actually what was important in that moment is I had to label the emotion. I wanted him to know that the reason he's upset is because he was disappointed that he didn't get to watch, to pick the movie or movie night, but that's okay. And we deal with disappointment in this world, so that's all right.
Well, Noona, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Loved the kind of variety of conversation. Definitely some things that I can try and take away and apply as well. And I'd love to watch you in action with some of my team at some point.
Maybe I'll do a lunch and learn for them.
Yeah, let's do lunch and learn.
Lunch and learn.
I like
yeah.
the sound of that.
Let's do it.
We have lunch and listen to you. Do we?
Yeah, have lunch. You could do it over Zoom. 45 minutes. Take it out of there. Well, they literally sit on a Zoom, do some lunch, and I guarantee you would want more after that.
Sounds fun. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. I loved it.
Well, for anyone listening, just give yourself a shout out in terms of where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm very active on Instagram, LinkedIn, and then my website's Neo Noor. So come find me there.
Which is NEONOOR.
Yes, exactly.
.com. Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.